Welcome everybody to the Hopkins Hour. We'd like to welcome people from across the university, colleagues and partners who are joining us today. Before we get started though, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the different lands on which we're meeting today. So for me, that's the Kumbameri people, speakers of the Yugambeh language. I'd like to pay my respect to elders past and present and extend that warm respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. For the presentation today, we're going to be talking about a partnership that's all around the development of a Centre of Excellence in Inclusive Education. We have myself presenting, Professor Paul Scuffham, Dr. Rhylee Sulek, Damian Hall and Michelle Tuffley. We have people representing both Griffith University and Sanctuary Early Learning Adventure. Before we get started, I'd like to just go through a few housekeeping items. The first of which is, if you have any technical difficulties, please do post a message in the chat. Michaela Kerr, thank you, has offered to try to solve our problems. I'd also like to encourage you to please post any comments or questions in the chat. We'll look at these at the end of the presentation, but by all means, please do feel free to use that function as we're going through. In terms of the questions and answers, we'll happy to explore all topics and we'll hear from the group in relation to those. In terms of the presentation itself, Michaela, if we could go to the next slide, please. We're going to start with an overview of Proxima, which is the building, talk about the partnership. Damian and Michelle are going to talk about the partnership from the perspective of Sanctuary Early Learning Adventure. Then we'll look at it from the perspective of Griffith University. We'll have some reflections and then move to the questions and comments. So without further ado, if I might be able to please hand over to Paul, who will talk about Proxima. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, David. And Rhylee's going to manage my slides for me. Thank you, Rhylee. Shall we jump to the next one? So I'll start talking. So it's a building, it's called Proxima. I'll come to the location shortly, but it's an $80 million investment. We are renting some space in that building. It's going to be based in the Health and Knowledge Precinct. It's a multi-function building with childcare professional suites. We will have a presence in there, and the Gold Coast Health and Hospital Service will also have a presence in there. There'll be a retail on the ground floor and 2 levels of car parking underneath. There was a launch early August for this. It was in the media, and I drove past the other day and they haven't started digging, but they should be starting digging anytime. They're expecting to open the facility in the first quarter of 2023, and it's owned, or the developers are Evans Long, they're the owners, and that's who we will be leasing some space off for the next 10, 15, 20 years, if not longer. Slide. Where it's located, it's in a good posse. As you can see, whoop, have to go back a couple of minutes. It's forward. There, that's the one. Thank you. So I don't know if you can see, there should be a blue circle in the middle there. That seems to have disappeared from the slide for some reason, but it's pretty much slap bang in the middle of that conglomeration. You can see at one end it's in Hill Street, at one end there is the Woolworths and Cohort building, and at the other is the Gold Coast Hospital. And if you look directly, it's probably straight up, which is like 11 o'clock from where Proxima is situated. You can see the Gold Coast Private Hospital. Next slide. And next slide, you can see it's an 8-story building. That comes up. We've got space on level 2.
Sorry, Paul, it's just not changing for me at the moment.
Here we are. And it changes too quick. You have to go back one. Doesn't really matter, but yeah, it's back too. Anyway, here we are, that slide there. We've got space on that level, and that space is essentially one up from where that arrow is pointing. And in that space, there we are, we'll stick with that one, that'll do. There was a test fit in that space. We were occupying that end of the building. It's slightly changed since the earlier test fit. They've expanded that area, made it more square for us, which is good. The final configuration is part of the process that we'll have to determine. That will be, we do have about 12 months to determine that, but we'd like to get that done sooner than later, probably in the next 6 months, to know exactly what office space, what clinics and so forth are going to be there. The clinical spaces are going to be rather fixed because they have plumbing and hand wash facilities in there, so they are going to be difficult to move if you want to move them. But everything else is fairly flexible, and we're responsible for the fit out of that space. It's all up as 400 plus square metres that we'll be leasing. And in that space, we should be able to fit 20 to 30 staff members. This one. The centre should cater for Griffith University staff and their infants, the hospital staff, students, and the broader community. It's a commercial operation. It'll be run by Sanctuary Early Learning Adventure. It's great to have Damian here today, who's the key man for Sanctuary Early Learning. So he'll come and talk shortly and tell you more about how they operate and what they work. So it's been a real partnership between, it's taken some time to get this going. It started a bit earlier than 2015, but with Ned Pankhurst and so forth. It arose, and then it had a bit of a death, and then it's been resurrected again in about 2015. And it's taken some time to get it to this point. There's conversations around the development. Where should it be? Can we get a childcare provider to run the facility itself? Sanctuary was identified as the best provider for this type of childcare centre. So we've all got agreements between us and the HHS and Sanctuary themselves and Evans Long, the developer. And it's taken some time, but we've got there, and it's a big step for Griffith, especially during the last couple of years with COVID and fiscal restrictions or constraints from Griffith University. Next one, please, Rhylee. Next two, actually. So progress to date, we'll talk about. So,
Sorry, Paul, that's mine. That's my slide.
Right. You can leave it there. Just leave it there. We'll be right. So progress to date. So there's been quite a lot of this planning going on around occupancy for the building itself, as well as for Griffith. It's still very much underway, and this is part of that planning process of what do we really want in there, how will it operate, what do we want to see happen in that space. It's the concept of development within the child health, learning, disability network, MHIQ. It's a university-wide scheme opposed to purely a health scheme, because we do need to educate people with early childhood education in there. We do need staff members who are experts in family environments and managing families and those sorts of things. You can't separate the kid from the family, really, so you need all these people. It's got to be multidisciplinary. So it's very much a collaborative planning process with Sanctuary and those people I've mentioned. We've got legal agreements around research collaboration, use of our logo, access to childcare space, data collection and so forth. These things are big. What data will be collected is something else, but we've got in principle agreements of what we're going to be doing, how we will operate, and we're getting to that point now of trying to formalise some of these things and develop them further, involve the wider Griffith community, and go from there. So I'm going to hand over to you, Rhylee. So is Dr. Rhylee Sulek.
Thanks, Paul. I'm sorry about the slow slide transitions. Can I just check, David, do you mind giving me a nod if we're on the partnership slide? Just making sure that I see the same thing that everyone else is seeing. Thank you. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly overview the partnership that we've been developing with Sanctuary Early Learning, who are the nominated childcare provider within this service. And as Paul mentioned, discussions around this inclusive childcare service have been ongoing for close to, I guess, 6 years now, but it's really been in the last 12 months that I've been engaging with Damian, Michelle and Lauren, and predominantly this has been through my work with the Child Health Learning and Disability Network, which David is leading at the moment. And we're a group of academics across the university, predominantly in allied health sciences and education, who really work together on projects that at the forefront have children in mind. So we want all children to be able to have a healthy and happy start to life. And one of the core features, I guess, of our work within the Child Network is partnering with community organisations. So this is included in the past with the Narang Alliance, and at the moment one of our key partnerships that we're developing is with Sanctuary Early Learning. And really we work with these community organisations to target community identified needs with the kind of shared goal and understanding of working towards improving outcomes for children in the region. So as I mentioned, around 12 months ago, myself and some other members of the network started really, I guess, thinking about what this service could look like and the potential within this. How could we embed research in this service in a way that's different to what's been done before? Let's see if I can change my own slides now. Anyway, so one of the first things we did, and this might seem quite obvious, was to meet with Damian and Lauren to really understand and identify what their philosophy and approach to working with children was, and whether this was going to align with the ways that we work within the network and the university. And wherever possible, what we've tried to do since meeting with Damian and Lauren last year is to co-develop approaches to this work. We want this to be distinct from other community embedded research and early intervention childcare facilities in the region. And we really want to identify and acknowledge the expertise that Damian, Lauren and Michelle and their group at Sanctuary Early Learning can bring to this collaboration. In a practical sense, what that has looked like to date is really taking the time to step out what this is going to look like. And as Paul mentioned, this has included things like agreements for work. So this covers, how data will be collected and stored, how we're going to move around within the space, so that, I guess, children and families and educators are aware of who's in that setting. And one of the key processes we're working through is to develop understandings and practices around research. So co-developing research priorities, having an understanding of what the questions are we want to be answering, establishing what learning and teaching placements might look like in this setting, and also identifying opportunities for capacity building. And as I said, the kind of co-developed approach is really key here, again, to have a service that is going to be different, and wherever possible, we don't want to be overstepping or interrupting the daily, I guess, practice of what's ongoing in the service. And one of the, I guess, big things, and this has been quite key for Damian and Lauren from a Sanctuary perspective, is identifying who is going to be involved in this work. And I guess that's why it's really exciting to be presenting today and connecting with the broader university community. Because integrating the Griffith and the Sanctuary teams from a really early start is going to be, I think, something that really makes a difference here. We want to make sure that we're working from a shared philosophy around child development, around what we want this work to look like, and working towards a shared goal. And again, I've said this multiple times, we don't want this to be business as usual as far as embedding research in a community service. We really want this to be distinct and stand apart. And now I will pass over to Damian and Michelle, who will share their perspectives from Sanctuary.
Thanks very much, Doctor. We are also very excited to be involved in this collaboration, and I know it has had a long life for you, and we have spent a lot of time together with yourself and David and your team over the last 12 months. to get our philosophies well understood and understand what the practical outcomes and opportunities are. So we're very grateful for that time. The key two things that came out of your introduction that I'd like to highlight is the word all children, and that pretty much sums up the process and the program that we're running through with this service to develop it together, and then collaborating and having our both teams working together and operating under similar values and commitment to the philosophy. We'll see a great outcome. At this point, I'd like for Michelle to kick off from Sanctuary's perspective.
Thanks, Damian. All right. Our philosophy comes from our values of collaboration, connection, and respect. By living these values, we create the foundation for learning in the future of young minds. Our commitment to every child and their family is to provide the highest quality educational curriculum and engaging learning environments to explore and play. Our goal is to leave each child with an inspired lifelong love of learning and a growth mindset. We know all children are capable and competent learners through our deep understanding of children. We are also able to support and encourage the acquisition of life skills to enable them to become the very best they can be. Our locations, we have 6 currently: Ashmore on the Gold Coast, Bentley Park in Cairns, Buderim on the Sunshine Coast, Highfields in Toowoomba, Maudsley on the Gold Coast, and Mermaid Waters also on the Gold Coast.
And we love that image.
And that's one of our favourite images. That's from our centre at Maudsley.
Yep.
Our beautiful playground out there. Oh, there we go. Who we are. Damian and Lauren Hall are the founders of Sanctuary Early Learning Adventure, and they have 2 beautiful sons, Connor and Austin. As a family, they value their roles and responsibilities and are committed to all children, families and teaching teams within our current centres. Supported by, to maintain the smooth running of our centres and continually drive quality improvement and innovative practices, Damian and Lauren are supported by Amelia Kolinak, Marketing and Innovations Manager, and Michelle Tuffley, Operations Manager. This leadership team supports each service daily through well-established systems and processes. Our teaching teams, with over 200 team members in our workforce, we are committed to both their personal and professional development. Our teams critically reflect on their own practices weekly and participate in quality improvement plan meetings, leadership team meetings, sustainability and reconciliation plan initiatives, and attend quarterly directors' conferences. Our teams also participate in external early childhood training, plus attends specialised training that is specific to Sanctuary Early Learning Adventure's point of difference. These are our 6 amazing directors. We've got Caroline is at Ashmore, Lisa is in Bentley Park, Amanda is in Buderim, Bridie is in Highfields, Kim is at Maudsley, and Erin is at Mermaid Waters. Our philosophy is reviewed annually at our directors' conferences to ensure we continue to deliver our promise and strive towards quality improvement and best practices for our children, families, teaching teams, and our community. This is a collaborative process which includes our teams, children, and families. This is just some operational information. Our services operate from 6:30 a.m. through to 6:30 p.m. We educate and care for children aged from 6 weeks through to school age. We have an on-site chef at each of our services who cooks from a 4-weekly rotating seasonal menu, which is approved by a paediatric nutritionist. Our classrooms include Striving Starfish, 0 to 2, Joyous Jellyfish, 0 to 2, Dancing Dolphins and Talented Turtles, 2 to 3s, Passionate Penguins is also 2 to 3s, Creative Coral and Soaring Seagulls are 3 to 5 years. We have outside school hours care, caring for children from 5 to 12 years. Within all of our services, we have a Queensland government approved kindergarten program delivered by a qualified early childhood teacher in line with the QKLG.
Thanks,
Over to
Michelle.
you, Damian.
Thank you. In the operational info, I think the discussion is still live around the operating hours, and that will be something we'll continue to explore with the team at Griffith and the hospital, and take into consideration the needs of the workforce and the families in that precinct. But excitingly, across all 6 of our services, every day we impact 899 families currently and growing. This is made up of 1,716 parents and guardians, 1,126 children, 205 staff, plus our wider communities, our collaborative partners, and a large number of sponsored junior sports clubs. It's something that we're very proud of, is our involvement in the local community at junior sports level in every area that we operate in. We're very proud to say that's literally thousands of lives impacted every single day by Sanctuary's operations. So the opportunity here, our objective is to inspire, to mentor, and to provide practice techniques that can be reproduced across the wider early childhood education and care sector. We will be proud to be an Australian first and share our inclusive program and practices in 3 to 5 years' time with the wider sector for the benefit of all. The space within Proxima. The first dimension of this project is in relation to the building and facilities that will enable us to provide high quality education and care for children with varying abilities. The thought and the attention to detail in the early stages of our work will ensure future and ongoing success. Input and feedback will be sought from families within current sanctuary centres and the wider community that have children with additional needs to ensure that our facilities meet their various requirements. The people. The second dimension of this project is focused on upskilling our teaching teams and health practitioners that work directly with our children and families. This is a major component of this project we are embarking on and collaborating on together, bringing up the skills of teaching teams and better informing families of what's available to them to support all children's early education is a major focus for us out of this. And we think with the help of the collaboration partners here, there's not a better environment that we could do those types of functions and support the families in those ways. So the training that will be delivered will be supported by the research conducted at Griffith University by their research team, and will support educators to understand how children learn, in what contexts, and how to tailor their practices to best support each child and their family. The third dimension is the children and their families. The third dimension is ensuring that families are supported and included in all aspects of the program. The foundation of our philosophy is based around family being the child's first teacher. We support and encourage the development of a healthy family unit. We understand firsthand the pressure that families are under where their children are, when there are children that require additional care and support. Our centre will have compassionate and highly skilled early childhood education team available to support these families through every challenge and celebrate every achievement along the way. So just want to discuss some of the potential barriers and the opportunities now. Some of the potential barriers to success of this collaboration are sourcing skilled teaching teams. Like probably all professional sectors at the moment, skills shortage is an issue, even more so in childhood, early education, and where we have additional needs. So sourcing a skilled team, maintaining a high level of wellbeing and enthusiasm in our educators. Because there is such a shortage of really skilled team members available in the talent pool, the ones that are very skilled and talented tend to get used a lot and lent on a lot by the less skilled. So for us, maintaining that high level of wellbeing, mental health, them looking after themselves inside and outside of work, and helping to build and maintain their enthusiasm is a potential barrier, but also an opportunity. Parents' apprehension towards the risks associated with an all-inclusive approach. So parents that aren't particularly well educated or aren't aware of how we can approach this collaboration may have some reservations. Families at a loss regarding where to find more support. And this is something we experience regularly in our current services. Google is usually where families start, and then they end up down a rabbit hole for a number of weeks or months trying to find answers and support and who's actually the best channel for them. to go down when they have a child with additional needs. So we'd like to be able to ratify that for them quickly and professionally and point them in the right direction with the support of our collaboration partners and the others within Proxima. Ensuring that neurodiverse children don't feel like they are part of an experiment or research project. This is one that we have discussed at length with David and Rhylee all the way through, is making sure that these next 2 points are particularly well covered off in the first instance and then adhered to long term, is that these children should be engaging in early education and the research objective, but also observant, not something that feels like they're in an environment to be researched. And we've got a number of different initiatives that we believe are going to make sure that that is, we successfully navigate that. And also ensuring that neurotypical children don't feel as though they are disconnected or secondary to the outcomes for the neurodiverse children. So we don't want to have a situation where there's more focus on one than the other. We treat all children equally. We believe they all deserve an equal start in their young lives, and ensuring that the consistent support and education is across all the children in the service, despite the goals that we have in our collaboration, is a very high level importance to us. To counteract the current largely segregated, unsupported and unformalised approach to inclusion within the early childhood education and care sector, and to create a clear formalised pathway. So there are a number of different approaches being applied at the moment. I don't think anybody has truly undertaken a collaboration this in depth, where we've had these stakeholders willing to come together and work for a long period of time, try and maintain the same team members in each stakeholder throughout the project if we can, so that we can get the best outcomes of our longer goals. Then we want to be able to hand back all our findings and the best practice to the entire sector. So that's counteracting that is of high importance. All collaborative partners continuously embracing and embedding the Sanctuary philosophy and our values of collaboration, connection and respect. Another one that we've spoken to at length, which also involves those from Griffith and other stakeholders being embedded in our practice in the way that we operate Sanctuary, but also being inducted as well, like they're coming into the team, so that they have the same information, skills and expectations as our team, and they know exactly how and why we operate the way that we do, so that it can be contagious for the children in the environment. They don't get different responses and different outcomes from different people or different stakeholders. So for them to feel really at home and like this is just one team. And maintaining key stakeholders' representatives for continuity and successful outcomes of the 5-year project. This could impact the development of an inclusive practices playbook for the sector. We would like to then be able to reflect and document it for others, and for it to be something we can hand back to the sector in its entirety. And I think to truly do that, it will really require Sanctuary and Griffith and other stakeholders to keep those key representatives on board as long as possible, if not for the entirety of the first 3 to 5 years, so that the collaboration doesn't need to be rebuilt continuously. It's very hard if we put 2 or 3 years into it and then someone disappears and we've got to replace them, and we've really got to start that process again. It doesn't actually align with the goals of the collaboration. So keeping the key stakeholders representatives in play would be a great outcome as well. And that is a potential barrier, but one that we are hoping we don't have to worry about. Sorry, I'm struggling with the tech side of this. What will success look like? So this one took us some time to build, and we've been working on it for a few months actually before we had to put this together for the Hopkins Hour today. So success for us, we believe best outcomes will be a well-established support systems that foster whole family units and that lower divorce rates. There's no doubt that there's pressure on marriages as in partnerships as it is in today, but there's even more where you have children with additional needs, and we think that being able to support the whole family, not just the child, which is in line with our philosophy and our values, is one of the most successful outcomes that we can seek, and that should lead to more whole family units. Access to early intervention that supports mainstream schooling outcomes for all children. So giving the early intervention and support that's required to get those children off to school, and the children who are neurotypical to have a greater understanding, acceptance and awareness of other children's needs and therefore being better, better people in society in their early years in primary school as well, which, back and forth supports both sides. Success will look like the acquisition of life skills, which enable children to be seen as capable and competent learners and to thrive later in life. For inclusive perspectives are an embedded practice to ensure all children embrace acceptance of difference and see non-biased attitudes as the norm. A particular focus for us is for when they leave Sanctuary and head off to primary school, not to have any biased attitudes, but just to see that diversity is normal and we're accepting of all. The creation of an empowered and skilled workforce with a focus on communication, behaviour and socialisation. The key word here, I think, is communication. There will be a lot of communication in this collaboration between Griffith and ourselves and people, potentially incursions and things coming in. The skilled workforce will be empowered by communication. And if we nail down the communication and keep the stakeholders representatives together, I think that success will uncover itself. Success would include strong collaborative partnerships with on-site therapists. These partnerships foster each family's ability to gain access to services that would otherwise have been restricted due to time, distance and work commitments. I'm sure everybody's been stuck in traffic when they need to be somewhere with their child. A lot of the appointments that you need to attend with your children will be available in Proxima or very, very close by. So for that reason, it will be very convenient and that will ensure better access to therapists and therefore better outcomes for children and families. And overarching, supporting the early childhood sector to reduce the stigma of children with additional needs. Some will want to say it exists, some won't. It exists. We need to deal with it. This is a really great way to approach it. And by handing back the playbook in a few years' time and empowering more educators and more service operators, there'll be less and less in the future. And that's something that we're very much looking forward to. At this point, I'll pass back to you, David, if I can.
Thank you very much, Damian and Michelle. I'd like to talk for a moment about the vision from the Griffith University point of view, and keep in mind that this is a work in progress and it will be shaped and informed by the views of colleagues across the university, and that's something we're looking forward to. It'll be shaped and informed by obviously partners in this sanctuary and other organisations as well, and it will certainly be shaped by the kids and the families involved. I know that's something that we're passionate about on each side of the collaboration, or each part of the collaboration, and also that we have some amazing expertise within the university as well around doing that. I know the consultation process that that occurs within sanctuaries around children and families and understanding their hopes, their dreams, their desires and their needs, and responding to those through that reflective practice that Michelle spoke about. Look, we think there's an opportunity here to positively transform the lives of children and families through excellence in inclusive childcare. By inclusive, we mean inclusive of all children. We will pursue this vision by creating a place in which every child can learn and grow together, where the knowledge gained and shared helps build an inclusive society. This could be an Australian first. If we get this right, and we absolutely plan to, an inclusive early learning environment underpinned by a program of embedded research and training, which seeks to translate the best available evidence in early childhood development into the environment. And what's not on the slide is to build the evidence from the expert practices of staff, children, and the families themselves. I'd like to reflect briefly on how this work and this partnership can align with the Griffith University Strategic Plan for 2025. When we think about the values, this work and what's proposed directly aligns with a number of UN Sustainable Development Goals, ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being for all at all ages, ensuring an inclusive and equitable quality education that promotes lifelong learning opportunities for all, and reducing inequality within and among countries. In terms of students, we intend to create outstanding interdisciplinary training opportunities for Griffith University students, undertaking professional development, professional preparation, and also those undertaking research training, just in the chat, I noticed Donna's comment around the workforce and the fact that Griffith University is a major contributor to the workforce in education and the health disciplines and a variety of other areas that are relevant to children, families, and this type of collaboration. We want to see outstanding opportunities in this space, sort of opportunities that students would want to come to Griffith to be part of. We also want to create, and believe we can, unique workforce, professional development and training opportunities for the broader sector. As Damian mentioned, they're already Sanctuary are working with thousands of people on a daily basis, children, families, staff. There's the opportunity and the desire from both sides to see the lessons learned, good, bad and otherwise, translated into that playbook that Damian talks about and Michelle talk about, to benefit the broader sector and to be shaped by the sector in terms of the practices occurring within the centre. In terms of research, we want high quality, co-designed and community relevant research at scale. There was a question, will it be research about children or with children? It'll be with children. It'll be with children, families and staff, trying to address the priorities that they see as most important that have a broader relevance in the community. It'll be a transparent, systematic, a tiered approach that is shaped by children's and families' voices. It'll be a way of fostering and leveraging interconnected ideas, approaches and opportunities that occur and can occur from across the university and through a range of partnerships. In terms of the people, we want the Griffith University team to be diverse, of course, interdisciplinary, and to come together to address goals that we have in common. We want a transparent and systematic approach to enable people to connect with the vision, the mission and activities of the centre. This is an opportunity for wide-scale collaboration, but we will do so in a way that's transparent and systematic so people know how to get involved, and we do that in an organised way to address some of the potential barriers that Damian identified at the end of his presentation. We want a vibrant, a supportive, a fun, a creative culture to be built in this environment within the Griffith team, within Sanctuary and together, and with other partners that will be involved. In terms of engagement, we want to create a way of thinking and working that resonates with relevant stakeholders, including government, non-government organisations. We're already seeing that with the information people have just at this stage, that the ideas are resonating, and that's really encouraging. We want to build a platform for addressing questions in common within and outside the collaboration to inform policy and practice. A place where questions can be answered that matter to organisations, to families, to kids and to government, and partner in large-scale, multi-institutional initiatives. Finally, in terms of the infrastructure, Paul showed some of the plans and a test fit earlier on. What we're going to be working towards in consultation within the university and with Sanctuary as partners is the development of a flexible and accessible, a productive space for us all. We want to see seamless integration with Sanctuary. So if children and families and staff are moving between these environments, although they may be leased by different people, it will have the same feeling as they walk through. We want to look at technology-infused ways of working. It includes the data capture, the sharing and the storage. And we want to use the co-location as a basis of partnership within the Proxima Knowledge and Health Precinct. There are a lot of initiatives underway and planned within that precinct, and this will be one of those, part of a connected web of initiatives. To realise the opportunity though, we do have to think very carefully and deliberately, work with passion, but also in a coordinated way. It must be child and family focused. One of the first things that Lauren and Damian and Michelle, when we met and began talking about, was the waterfall, the decision-making process they go through when making decisions about any practice, any aspect of work within Sanctuary. Forgive me if I'm talking for you, you can correct me in a minute. But the impression I was left with is, when it comes to making a decision, they start with the child, and if it's good for the child or believed to be, and in consultation with the children, wherever possible, and they think about the families. And if it's good for the families, again, through consultation, they think about the staff. And they go through the decision-making process to make sure that at all times these decisions are grounded in the thing that matters most, right? The kids themselves and their autonomy, their opportunities, and giving them the best possible start to life. We have to be values-led. It's the thing that connects us, and I feel like we've got really good, strong shared values across both organisations. So it's an amazing platform on which to then build the strategy and then build the operational aspects of this. We've got to be shaped by multiple and diverse perspectives, including people with lived expertise. So it's the children, the families, adults who have lived expertise of disability as well. This will be reflected in the advisory group that supports this work and in all aspects of the work. We need to be systematic and strategic. We have to think to the future. So what can we do now that can grow this systematically into really amazing collaboration? We need to think about the children and families, of course. Sanctuary and Griffith University staff, think about our students and the stakeholders. There's a lot of people who have a vested interest and a great opportunity from this, but we have to bring all of those together, all those groups. In terms of the organisational structure, as Paul mentioned, there is an agreement that's in place already between Sanctuary and Griffith University, and then there are other corresponding agreements with other partners. At the core of the understanding of the way that this will operate between Griffith and Sanctuary and Griffith, is the notion that there'll be a central centre advisory group. And that'll be, as you can see, including members from Griffith University, Sanctuary, people with lived expertise of disability, and parents, caregivers, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and representatives of Gold Coast Health and Hospital Service. This group will be responsible for overall decision making and meeting on a regular basis, notionally monthly, at this stage. Within the university, there'll also be a consultation group, and I'll share in a moment information about how to join a Microsoft Teams to be part of this. This will be self-nominating. It's open to all, drawing on interest and expertise from across the university. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but it's an avenue with which people can put their hand up and indicate what they can bring to this passion and expertise and knowledge and skills and so on, and connect. There'll also be an external stakeholder group representing government and community organisations. And this will be a group that will help to, I guess, amplify the outcomes, but also provide advice that helps to inform the strategy and the way that we approach this collaboration. So in terms of connecting with the work, it's been fantastic to see the level of interest across the university, and including this today, but lots of other conversations and so on as well. So we've established a team site. It's titled Excellence in Inclusive Childcare, and we encourage people to join that, to hear about updates on the progress. We'll also be presenting webinars like this and discussion forums and so on. It'll be a place to make suggestions, to ask questions, to share interests, share opportunities, and so on. There'll be invitations to contribute to specific aspects of the work. And there'll be a frequently asked questions, a living document that will continually update. We're thinking to the future here. This will help the development of this, but it'll also be a mechanism by which in 1 year's time, 3 years, 5 years' time, people who are new to the university or develop an interest in this area can always connect. In terms of the pathway to opening, so the fourth quarter of this year, we're establishing the advisory group, the Microsoft Teams, as a way of connecting. It's possible that a director will be appointed to oversee this work. In quarter 1 and 2 of next year, it's a big focus on operational planning, including pathways for research and learning and teaching, including HDR opportunities and professional preparation opportunities as well. In 3 and 4 next year, we're thinking about capacity building and professional development. It's not like we'll wait till then to start these things, but it will be a core focus because we'll be close to the opening. We want to make sure on day one that the teams across the different partners know each other. They're already humming, they're already working well together and share the values and also share the understanding of the way we'll work together. So what I'd like to do now is just pause briefly and ask Rhylee, Paul, Michelle and Damian, if you'd like to just offer one final reflection before we move to question and answers. Rhylee, sorry, Michelle and Damian, can I ask you first?
Thank you. For me, I guess I've been in this industry for 25 years. I worked right from being an educator in a room, right through to director and now operations manager. This to me is such an amazing opportunity because in our industry, we have never had something like this. Educators go in and try to support children who require additional support and families, and there is just not enough support out there. So for us to be able to be part of this and then to be able to share it with our industry in 3 to 5 years' time is just phenomenal. It's an amazing opportunity to be part of. I'm really proud of it.
I agree. For me, I think that it's just popped up in one of the questions actually as well. I think for me, in the past 45 minutes or so, I've been in the back of my mind thinking about how the skills of our workforce will be augmented or shaped by the collaboration with Griffith and the research team and other stakeholders, i.e. Education Queensland and Autism Queensland and so on, that we will be tapping into. And for me, that's probably a really, really exciting opportunity here, because those educators at some point in time will likely move on to another service or to operate their own service. And given there'll be a 60-odd workforce in this service, if only 10% of them move on each year to a separate service, 6 more services have been upskilled the second they arrive. And when we think about the way that the ripple effect works over time, I think that upskilling of the workforce out of this collaboration is a real opportunity and something we should be, we should hold very high and be very proud of as we work through it.
Thanks, Damian. Thanks, Michelle. Paul, can I invite you?
Yeah, sure. It's a great opportunity, and I don't know where to start with all the opportunities. You've mentioned a lot of them, but there's even more than what has been mentioned, such as tapping into the early child care educators themselves, so the early child care workers, trying to upskill them with the latest techniques that us as researchers and educators come across and want to try out or develop and implement, as well as having it as a living lab to research the kids, as well as having students observe what's going on in there through the technology, we'll be having cameras and audio and so forth in there. It's going to be a bank of observational materials to look at to train our young students, our undergrads, all sorts of things. So it's immense. This should be the frontier of early child care services and early child care education and research.
Thanks, Paul. And Rhylee.
Thanks, David. I agree that it's just a very exciting opportunity, and I think Paul mentioned it earlier, it really is a blank slate at the moment. We have an opportunity here to design a space from, the physical layout to the people who are involved that is really going to be accessible for all children, all families. And I think taking this really slow stepped out approach means that we can invite collaboration and expertise from these really early planning stages from people that are going to have ideas and innovations that maybe we're not thinking about right now. And I think there's just so much potential for this to be an excellent, Paul said frontier service, and I think that's just great.
Thanks, Rhylee. What we might do now is move to some question and answers, and I'll go through the chat and maybe share some of these questions with you all, if that's okay. Michelle and Damian, can we perhaps start with a couple for you? There are a few questions. One is around what is meant by additional needs, and also around the sorts of inclusive education practices that you might be currently applying or thinking about, I guess, for the future. Are you happy to share some thoughts on those?
So for us, additional needs means a lot of different things, I guess. So it's anything where a child requires additional support. It could be gifted children. It could be children who are in foster care. It could be children who are in the care of their grandparents, children with ASD, children with any other diagnosed condition. Yeah, do you have any other?
With our design for the building, we're bringing in some experts from the US and locally as well to help us address the various additional needs that could come up, physical and mental, and then environmental. Like Michelle said, people that are raised in unusual family units or had traumatic backgrounds. So, and that therein lies the challenge of just how many additional needs we need to consider. The simplest of challenges that we run into is the Education Department's requirement to have door handles of 1,500 high, for example. Well, that's not going to work here. So there are a lot of additional needs there, and we're certainly trying to scope as many as we possibly can into the design and then the program in practice.
Thank you. What about, there's a question around, diversity. Will we see that in the educators? And also a question around the co-development process, and that the practices of the educators within Sanctuary will also be transformed. I wonder, could you talk a little bit about your staff, diversity, but also that approach that I mentioned a moment ago around how you consult with children, families, and staff in the development of your services?
So we currently have within almost all of our services, we have educators, that have additional needs. We have an educator up at our centre in Buderim. She leads the Coral Room, which is a 3 to 4 year old room. She has ASD herself. So we work with her around if there is a massive change coming in the centre. We give her as much notice as we can. We've worked with her around what are some of the additional support that she needs from us as her employer, that we can then best support her within the workplace. We have other educators who have other requiring other additional support. Do you think any others, Damian?
Yeah, probably won't go into the details of them, but we do have a diverse workforce already, and a workforce that has additional needs. And I think we also have an approach, and we have had this come many times, where sometimes people need a bit of a life break or a bit of space as well to be the best. And one assistant director recently just took 4 weeks off. They had some major life changes. They didn't want to leave us, but they couldn't fulfil their position obligations either. So we just worked out a way to work with that person to keep them involved and employed with Sanctuary, so that when they were ready to come back, there was a position there for them still. So yes, we have a diverse workforce now, and we're considerate of the staff, and life happens, and we're aware of that, and we work with our team. You probably want to talk about the way that we collaborate with the children and families.
So thank you. Our educators, on the back of we use a bubble program for the way we document children's learning. On the back of our bubble program, it's a fortnightly programming cycle. On the back of that, it has some prompting reflective questions. And throughout that, it covers all aspects of the program, Indigenous perspectives, how was your room environment this week, but there's also the children's voice is part of that. That then feeds back into the leadership team meetings, which then feeds back into our quality improvement plan meetings. So every fortnight I have a Zoom meeting with each centre, and their leadership team comes to have a meeting with me, and then we actually update our quality improvement plan. So the children's voices are coming through from the rooms straight through into the various meetings that we have, and then straight into the quality improvement plan. We also collaborate with our families. We have parent information nights. We have even through the educators conversations daily with them. But then we've just had we reviewed our philosophy several weeks ago at our last directors meeting up in Cairns. We've reviewed our philosophy as a leadership team. We then sent it out last week, and it's due back from the families and the children tomorrow. So then that's how we finalise. So everybody does have input into all aspects of the service, and it just depends. Again, it depends on the centre. So some of our centre at Mermaid Waters has a different demographic of families compared to our centre in Cairns. So we really tailor the type of feedback that we get, or the type of interaction and reflection that we have with the children and the families, dependent on the centre. But it is a very big part of what we do. Thank you both.
Look, the vast majority of questions are coming to you. There's obviously a lot of interest in, the service and how it operates. So if it's okay, I'll just ask a couple more. One of them's around, given the current affordability issues for low socioeconomic and other families, how will the aspirations be achieved and accessibility and affordability maintained for children and families that are most vulnerable in the community, those with additional needs and from diverse backgrounds, as you've referred to? So I guess there's a question around your experiences connecting with these families and also considering some of the issues such as affordability. Do you have any thoughts?
So we will be accessing the current funding that's already there. So we've got ACCS, which we're able to access for families to paying their fees, NDIS and also ISS. So ISS, we can have additional educators come in. It's paying for an additional educator, which supports the whole room. But then there's also Innovative Solutions, which is a program through ISS where we actually have 6 months worth of, we can choose whatever it is that how we access that, but it might be training, a topic that we decide to train on, and then it's 6 months worth of training. So that will be working with the children, the families, our educators, and it's a whole actual project. So there is funding that we can access to support families to access the service.
And I think a key piece to that, David, goes back to my comments around families not knowing where to turn or what's available as well. So with the various layers of childcare support, NDIS support, ACCS support and other initiatives, there should be very little instance where families can't get the support they need. They just don't know where to look quite often. And that's it's a bugbear of mine that as Australian taxpayers we provide that, yet it's so difficult for families to uncover it and figure out where to go. They need to have someone that they can turn to for that, and we would like to be part of that solution.
Thank you. A final question. There are a number around specific operational aspects of Sanctuary. So staff ratios, child staff ratios, conditions, employment, packaging and so on. But I think we might carry over some of those for another time. There'll be lots of opportunities. But perhaps a more broad question that comes through, but essential, is around the potential. So there is great potential for this collaboration for families accessing the service. But can you tell us more about what you think this collaboration could mean for the early childhood sector more broadly? Damian, Michelle, would you be happy to share your thoughts, and then we'll wrap up in just a minute's time.
I'll just pick up a couple of questions quickly, David.
Oh, please.
I need to let go over. Do educators have paid planning time?
Yes.
Yep, every educator has paid planning time, and we have cover as well, so that no one else was without. This service will have its own inclusion support and wellbeing officer over and above the usual management requirements that we have for a service. Lauren and I are personally in the services at least every fortnight, so the services aren't run by others and we aren't aware of what's going on. We have an ISS person in most services already at some level, and most of of course we meet minimum ratios, but most of the time we're over ratios as well. Our services all operate at a very high occupancy. Most of them have families waiting. Some of them have in excess of 60 or 70 families waiting to get on into the service. And I think that best reflects the way that Sanctuary operates, our values and what we mean to the communities that we serve.
Thanks very much, Damian. Look, it's 29 past, so what I'm going to do is bring it to a close now. Can I please encourage people to join that Teams? That will be the best place to connect from here. Can I please thank Michaela Kerr for organising today and supporting the event. Thank you so much, Michaela, as always.